is that it was written by a slave trader. A slave trader wrote that song. And when they go to church and they sing it and think that it will give them a passage to heaven and so on, if you know the history, you can only laugh at them. Yes, the Pope is apologizing for the role played by the Catholic Church in the transatlantic slave trade. We have heard. But this apology is coming after more than 40 million Africans were massacred, were killed. This apology will not bring them back to life. The 40 million Africans who were killed, this apology would not bring them back to life. You understand? The estimate is that for every single African who was captured into slavery, 3 others were killed in the wars of resistance. The estimate is that 12.6 million Africans were taken into slavery. Do the maths. The 40 million who were killed, how are they coming back to life? Today, Pope Leo says that he's sorry. The church is sorry. 40 million people have been killed. Are they coming back to life? Master, are they coming back to life? Today, the Pope says that, oh, we are sorry for what we did. Okay? The Catholic Church is still one of the richest institutions on earth. It has lands, it has schools, universities included, and so on. It actually runs banks, financial institutions, and so on. All derived from the profits that the church accumulated as a result of its participation in the slave trade. That wealth is stolen wealth. Is the church going to give up its stolen wealth? Today, look at the poverty in Africa, the lack of development and so on, and all of this wealth. Some of it sits in Banco and Bruciano. Some of it sits in the Vatican. When will the stolen wealth be returned to the African people? The apology does not return the stolen wealth. So he has apologized, all right, we have heard. But the stolen wealth, when is it coming back to Africa? Look. And it say, oh, we are sorry. Sorry for what? We should get into it. At that time, in 1452, the Catholic Church actually made laws through an instrument which was then known as the papal bulls. So in 1452, the Pope issued a papal bull authorizing King Alfonso of Portugal to come into our part of the world to civilize us. This is very important, to civilize us. Do you know the impact of that? The meaning of that? You can only capture others and use them as donkeys, and use them as beasts of burden and so on, if you have a sense of superiority. Indeed, if you think that all human beings are equal, you cannot capture some and use them as your property, as beasts of burden and so on. So the popes, the law which was signed by the Pope, which authorized the civilization of the African, implied that the African was not civilized and therefore was inferior to the whites, to the Europeans. This is the damage the Catholic Church did. This is the damage the Pope did. It provided the moral and legal justification for the transatlantic slave trade. You understand? And this is horrifying. Apart from the fact that the church itself took part in this heinous crime against humanity and so on. The church is the institution which provided the legal and moral justification for the transatlantic slave trade. You see, it's amazing. I mean, just if you know history, a lot of the things that you see around that we worship and so on, you would throw them away. You understand? You would throw them away. But today, the Catholic Church says it is sorry. It is apologizing. It doesn't take us anywhere. It doesn't right the wrongs that they committed against us. But interestingly, it is not just the Catholic Church. The Church of England has also apologized. The Anglican Church has also apologized for its role. You know why? Because the church itself kept slaves. The leaders of the Anglican Church kept slaves. They themselves were slave owning. They owned slaves. They exploited slave labor on plantations. Why? The Pope. There was a Pope who had slaves. This is the truth in our history. The church itself kept slaves. So today we are waking up, we are looking through, we are seeing through their lies, we are beginning to fight, and then all of a sudden, one after the other, say, we apologize, we apologize. To dull our resistance, we must understand that they are apologizing because we fought. They are apologizing today because we resisted. If you stop your resistance, finish. You won't get anything. The resistance against the transatlantic slave trade and all those who perpetuated it must continue unabated until final victory. You understand? Apology. What are we going to do with apology? And you know, my brother, over the week, I heard something and I almost choked. You know, the government of Ghana is organizing this conference on reparations. I think it starts on the 7th or 17th of June. 16th. Okay, 16th of June. And to my horror, what am I hearing? That Nicolas Sarkozy, President of France, is offering to come and give the keynote address. What? Are we going to allow that? That the President of France, who abstained from the voting on the resolution in the UN, only this year, March 26, France abstained. The President of France is coming to Ghana to give the keynote address at a conference on reparation. What is wrong with us? Are we going to agree that Macron should come to Ghana to give the keynote address? What kind of a people are we? So we have no shame. We don't feel any pain. We lie down. They walk on us anyhow. Macron keynote address at a conference of reparations. Well, look, President Macron should advise himself. The embassy of France in Accra should advise Macron. Because if he sets his foot on Accra, he will be met with a massive demonstration. We will teach Macron a lesson. We will let him understand that we are no fools. And that he cannot go to the UN General Assembly, abstain from the vote, come up with all kinds of cock and bull stories about how the resolution was establishing a hierarchy of law and so on, and therefore France could not vote for it and so on, and turn round and come back to Accra to deliver the keynote address. It will not happen. Look, what happened to Macron on his visit to Kenya will be a child's play. He should take that assurance. It will be a child's play. At least I'm sure of one thing. If nobody will pick up a placard, I will pick up a placard and go to the Accra International Airport and go to the conference center. Wherever Macron goes, he will be followed with placards. What is this? Macron is coming here. Incredible. You understand? So as we're coming to Accra, Macron should think twice, about coming to Accra. You see, what are we going to do with apologies? Anytime somebody apologizes on behalf of the perpetrators, our foreign minister is quick to issue a statement. Oh, we are happy and so. Happy about what? The apology has not led to the rectification of the wrongs. Why? Tomorrow the King of England will come and say we apologize and still be riding the golden chariot that they stole from Cape Coast. What is the meaning of that apology? That ceremonial golden chariot, gold chariot, it's not golden, it's gold chariot. All the gold used in building that chariot was stolen from Cape Coast. If the King of England wants to apologize for what they have done, he should return that chariot to Cape Coast. You understand? Why? Today they are rich and we are poor. Why are they rich and we are poor? Because of the transatlantic slave trade, and the fact that, as a matter of fact, the slave trade has not ended. It is continuing today under a different guise, and I will show you the guise under which it is operating today. So, apology sounds nice, but the slave trade must stop now. It is continuing. Look at Ghana. Look at all of the African countries. If you take Ghana, all our railway line starts from the places where we produce diamond, gold, bauxite, timber, and so on. Areas of the concentration of wealth. And they all end up in the ports. This is a continuation of the slave trade. This extractive economy, this relationship which is based on the extraction of our wealth to Europe and so on, is a continuation of the transatlantic slave trade. It hasn't changed. You understand? Today, look at our educational system. Our educational system was fashioned to justify this inhuman treatment of the African. Educational system was fashioned to justify our exploitation and so on. We need to change that educational system. And it's going to cost a hell lot of money to build new curricula for education in Africa and the Caribbean and so on. Who must pay for it? They must pay for it. They are responsible for the current situation and they have to pay for it. We have a right to demand that they pay for it. Indeed, we need to begin to understand reparation as a movement to reset the world. Because the world as it's presently constructed is to our disadvantage. And we need to build a new world based on justice, based on principles of equality and so on. Take the United Nations. There are 55 African countries with a total population of 1.4 billion. Every year in September, our leaders are encouraged to go to the New York General Assembly and go and make speeches and come back home. It has no impact, no effect. Real power is in the Security Council, and we don't have a veto. Why doesn't Africa have a veto in the UN Security Council? It is because at the time that we were constructing the United Nations, we were colonies. Okay? We were colonies. So we were not allowed to participate in the processes of setting up the UN and its agencies, including the World Bank, the IMF, and the World Trade Organization. We must demand a reset of the United Nations and its institutions. Indeed, I was in Algeria with the foreign minister of Togo, and he made a brilliant speech. The foreign minister of Togo made a brilliant speech. The foreign minister of Togo said, look, if they won't respect us, if they will not allow us full participation in the activities of the UN and in the structures that make important decisions about the world, why do we go to the General Assembly? The foreign minister of Togo said, boycott the General Assembly. Let them take the UN and let us see whether the UN will continue to have the legitimacy that it has. This is the foreign minister of Togo. This is the foreign minister of Togo, not the foreign minister of Cuba, the foreign minister of Togo, making this bold statement in Algeria. You understand? So look, the time has come for us to intensify the struggle. As for the confused African intellectuals, and there are so many of them, they are so confused, it's unbelievable. We are fighting for reparative justice. And these African intellectuals come and say, oh, we are not entitled to any reparation. These African intellectuals come and say, why are you fighting for reparative justice? After all, it is Africans who sold their brothers and sisters into slavery. Where did they get that from? Unbelievable. The resistance against the transatlantic slavery from Africa is so well documented. All you have to do is a little research and you will find the resistance to the transatlantic slave trade by African people. When they say that for every person who was captured into slavery, 3 others died. Why did they die? If they supported the transatlantic slave trade, would they have died? They died in wars of resistance against the transatlantic slave trade. Look, if you go to Europe today and you go to their museums and you see the human remains which are on display and so on, whose remains are in their museums? The remains which are in their museums are the remains of resistance. The wars of resistance on the continent and so on. In any case, let us say that we will agree that Africans also took part. Today, if we are looking for the things which, the surpluses which were generated from the slave trade, do you find it in Africa? Huh? The surpluses which were generated by the slave trade, you can't find it in Africa. You find it in Barclays Bank. You find it in the Vatican. You understand? You find it in European institutions and so on. So if we took part, how come that the profits did not come to Africa but all of it went to Europe? So even if we took part, we still have reason to fight for reparation because the profits did not stay here. It went out. Sala, Asagoma. Asagoma. What is this? So look, the battle will continue. The apologies may be regarded as a small first step forward. That is all they are. Very, very small, Vikuchi, small step forward. You understand? What we want to do is to reset this world. And nothing will stop it. The struggle has started. The struggle will continue until final victory. But also let me sound a small note of caution to our leaders. We salute our leaders. We respect them for making this an issue. We salute them for taking the resolution to the UN General Assembly. We salute them for the bold discussions they've had in the AU summits, for the interactions they've had with the Caribbean states and so on, for the progress that we have made so far. But this struggle is not for them. This is a struggle for all Africans everywhere. This struggle is not for President Mahama. This struggle is not for Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. So they should never at any time think for one moment that they will control the movement of this struggle and its destination. They have done well, we salute them. But this is a mass struggle of the African people everywhere. before they go and embrace those who are apologizing, and sit on the podium with them in conferences on reparation and so on, they should remind themselves that this is a people's struggle which will be waged by the people, and the people will determine when victory is achieved and when victory is not achieved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're right. The conference will start from the 17th and end on the 19th. You have also forgotten that the man declared himself Pan-African in Kenya. So he's using that status to come in.
But you see, I'm very surprised to hear this. That he's actually wanting to come. I mean, Macron wants to come and give the keynote address after all that he's done. Especially after what happened to him in Nairobi. I can't believe it.
He has no respect for us.
Level of desperation.
Macron has no respect for us. Did you see how he was talking down to the participants in the conference in Kenya?
The hit back he got. The people didn't take their hit back at him. You know? So if therefore the conference that he himself was organizing, this was how he was treated, I can't imagine that he would want to come here.
Well, he wants to.
Well,
he has the authority.
He'll be sorry
over our leaders. And as Senior Pratt said, we the people must take the lead to resist.
Well, a few comments before we continue. This is from Dr. Kwesi. Senator, the Pope's apology doesn't assuage the killing of our people. It doesn't assuage the killing of millions of Hero and the pygmies, Herero and pygmies of the Congo Basin. If the Vatican is genuine with this apology, it must openly support the United Nations resolution on reparations, and it must take the lead in dismantling its profits from the slave trade. Only then can the Vatican and the Catholic Church be taken seriously. A few more of those comments that are coming in. This says, hello. I'd like to point out something with your... hello, Mr. Pratt. This is Kwesi Kwanzaa from Brema Asekuma in the Central Region. And he is saying, I see you view history through a relatively leftist point of view, which is not wrong, but it's highly biased and prone to untrue extrapolations. Slavery was evil. Concrete points. In your I think you made a point of 40 million casualties during the transatlantic slave trade during the wars of resistance. The second T in the above acronym says trade, and multiple African kingdoms against the slave race, exactly what you're talking about, profited massively. They get a silence from you that I believe is very disingenuous. This is not intellectual. You're simply arguing from a Marxist lens. The fact that the process from slavery are seen in the West is an indictment on us Africans, not on them. Kill the excuses and let us build stronger African countries.
My brother, is this not just what I have described? I'm sure he considers himself intellectual.
Find out about the name slave beats, and he would understand that there was nothing like a trade.
Yeah, he accepts that it was a trade. Poor goodness, poor him.
You should research better.
Is he a he or a him?
He's a he.
Poor him.
This next says, Senator, please tell Comrade Pratt that Macron's coming. There's nothing wrong because it is all about the interest. One thing I have learned from them, as South Africa is exhibiting it, is that they only care about what they say and do. They like shifting the blame on the victims. Comrade Pratt should be like Osajifo to warn us and expose those of our own who embrace and tolerate the colonialists. This one also says, Comrade Pratt, such Africans are only illiterate but not educated. There's this one. Some more. Senator, good morning. The height of their savagery, branding fellow human beings with red-hot irons. Uncle Sam sent us from Spintex Road. There's Roland who said, the apology from the Catholic Church is full of hypocrisy. According to data, the Catholic Church will be growing in Africa in the next decade than any other part of the world. And of course, this is Kofi. Michael from Ablekuma says, good morning. What is Pope Leo saying? Apologize. Will he bring lost lives and lost properties? Can he clean the scars? The master puts his name and marks on slaves and their babies, lost families, only to say sorry. Thank you very much for those comments you're sending to us. Well, so that's on the very first discussion, which is a very important discussion. In fact, we have been discussing this and we'll continue to discuss that until we get to a certain point where we know the world has accepted that this was a crime. And secondly, reparations must be paid. Well, let's move on to a problem that's pressing. In fact, it's become a feature of the rainy season, not only in the capital, but in many other cities and towns across Ghana. Places that did not used to flood are now flooding. Question is, what's the problem? And in Accra recently, it's become particularly problematic, but they're getting used to that. That whenever the Wager Dam is built, we'll have floods in our houses, we'll move out temporarily, and then we'll return after the flood waters have receded. But as I saw this, I think 2023 that it happened. It happened this time around again. So we'll be discussing that. And this time around, I will start with Ni on this. Ni.
Well, say that. This issue of flooding has been with us for some time now. I can't say for a fact whether it's getting worse or it has improved, but I can confidently say that we have totally failed in terms of planning our various cities. We've totally failed on that front. That development are moving faster than planning. And so we plan around what is being developed. And most time the engineering of our drains are so poor that it actually do not take into account the structures in terms of how we are placed. Back in the years, we've never heard Dansoman flooding. We've never heard of that. Where the old Winneba Road connects behind Pambros and all that was a wetland. Today it has been filled, sold. We all saw it. In fact, it's quite recent. I had a drive there and I was amazed the kind of structures you have there. I was like, do you know where this really is? Do you know where you are? In fact, you are living on water. There are many places in Accra that I just cannot fathom why somebody would buy such a place as a land and to build. I saw even huge warehouses in there. And I asked myself the question, have you taken the appropriate insurance for this? Because the floods will come. You know, we have seen what goes on at the Sakumono end. Almost all our Ramsar sites are under attack. I saw the last administration, the regional minister demolishing buildings at the Ramsar site. And then the current one is also demolishing buildings at the Ramsar site, the same place. So the issue is how quickly are people building? And don't we see, the authorities, don't they see when these buildings are coming up? But of course, that is one aspect of this whole issue. I think that the time passed, the people who lived in Accra were smarter than those of us living in Accra today. Why I say so? I grew up in Accra. I grew up in Gamashi. And almost every 2-3 houses, you can count 3 houses and you'll find a well in one. And even when you get to the side of where we call English today, there were a lot of what we call taboo. So when it rains, most of these table, it's a well, but it's a stone well, you know, that harvests water. Today we've put concrete almost everywhere. And the drains are so small, they cannot contain what is coming. And the dirt, the plastic. On the